Hello, this is Chris O'Regan here with you once again with another episode of Super Happy Game Time. This time around, we're taking a look at Darwinia Plus on Xbox Live Arcade. Darwinia Plus is an Xbox 360 port of a PC game, or should I say two games, those being Darwinia and Multiwinia. First appearing in 2005 and the latter arriving in 2008, it carries much favour within the PC gaming community. With the game being an RTS at heart, will its affection carry over to the land of consoles? Well, I think it should. And here's why. The backstory of Darwinia concerns the work of Dr. Sepulveda. He is a computer scientist who has created a virtual world called Darwinia. He populated it with Darwinians, all of whom have a primitive artificial intelligence. They are born and die within the world that Dr. Sepulveda has created. Sadly, this harmonious world has been corrupted by a virus. Its origin is unknown and is up to the player to eradicate it. Otherwise, the very existence of Darwinia is under threat from total destruction. Darwinia Plus is split into two separate games. Darwinia is the single-player game that has the player working their way through a set of predefined missions. The gameplay is significantly different to the multiplayer game, for it was designed from the ground up to be a single-player experience. That is why what you're getting here is a pair of very different games for the price of one. Their only commonality is the presence of Darwinians in both and the world they inhabit. In Darwinia, the game starts off at a very slow pace, with Dr. Sepulveda providing a running commentary to the player to help them become acclimatized to the intricacies of the controls. Initially, it can be a little daunting at first, but with the well-designed mission progression, the player is introduced to new concepts in the game at a very steady pace. At first, the player is provided with squads. These are a selection of armed units that can lay waste to almost any virus infection. They can either be directly controlled or directed to move to a location. Be warned that their pathfinding is abysmal, however, forcing the player to micromanage their movements for fear of them becoming stuck, or worse still, getting themselves drowned in digital water. These squads are the shock troops that the player uses as a vanguard against the virus threat. Following them are the engineers. These are a vital unit to have, and usually outnumber the squads in a mission. Their primary use is to harvest souls. These souls are used to spawn Darwinians, the primary resource of the game. These souls appear as a virus is destroyed. This means that engineers usually follow squads after they've cleared an area, collecting the souls which are then turned into Darwinians. Now initially, the Darwinians are a somewhat helpless bunch. They mill around aimlessly until ordered to move in a direction once the player promotes one as an officer. Once they do so, the Darwinian can only direct others and will only move until told to by the player. This changes, however, as the player researches new technologies. Yes, you guessed it, Darwinia has a tech tree, although it is by no means as complex as that found in Sins of Solar Empire, you'll be happy to hear. Many aspects of the tools provided to the player to vanquish the virus can be upgraded, everything from increasing the number of souls an engineer can carry to the number of unique programs the player can run at the same time, these programs being the squads and engineers I spoke of earlier. Whilst very simple in the beginning stages of the game, the missions soon become far more complex, with the player having to manage great swaths of Darwinians as they not only tackle the creatures spawned by the virus, but also corrupted Darwinians who are hell-bent on the destruction of their former brethren. Multiwinia is a very different experience, as it does away with the virus completely, for that was vanquished by the player in Darwinia. The story is that the once united Darwinians have now become aggressive to one another and have formed tribes that are constantly at war. Henceforth, they have become known as Multiwinians. This opens up the concept of Darwinian versus Darwinian combat, and the player is charged with taking on other player-controlled Darwinians in various game types in this environment. These range from the simple domination, where the player has to control most of the spawn points on a map, through to capture the statue, where the player must get their Darwinians to move this statue across the map to their home base. One omission from the Xbox 360 version of Multiwinia is the Assault mode. This required the player to defend a bomb from the opposing players before it blew up. It was dropped due to game balancing and population cap issues related to the Xbox 360 port. Another major change from the single player game is the eradication of predefined programs that the player had at their disposal in the original Darwinia. Rather than be able to call up special units at will, the player can capture crates that fall from the sky using wayward Multiwinians. Once captured, a random special unit appears that the player can use to attack the opposing player with. This was done in order to prevent an obvious game-breaking device the single-player method of summoning units at will would have had. It also adds a bit of variety to the game, as it has players sending Darwinians around the map chasing these crates. With the game being set in a virtual world, Darwinia Plus does look terribly dated, with its primitive shapes and flat textures. The sounds in the game are all functional, with little to no score present. This is both a function of the game as well as a stylistic choice made by the developer. Each sound that is emitted provides clues to the player as to what is occurring on the battlefield. Whether it's an engineer collecting souls or Darwinians dying as they become overwhelmed by the virus, every squeak and bloop serves a purpose. So yes, Darwinia Plus is somewhat jarring to look at. Its retro styling is a little hard to take for most, and I know of many who are not keen to dive into this game simply because of its graphical style. But I implore you to look beyond the visuals and see the gem of a game that Darwinia Plus is. It is probably one of the deepest and complex games I've ever played on Xbox Live Arcade. To turn your back on it simply because it looks a bit weird is utter folly. The multi-layered strategies the player can employ in both single or multiplayer games are innumerate. This is a game that gives the player an immense sense of satisfaction once they have completed a level or defeated an opponent online. Yes, it is 1200 Microsoft points, but I challenge anyone to present a similarly priced game that has the same amount of content and depth that Darwinia Plus boasts. For more vidcasts, podcasts, previews, reviews and features, please go to shfts.com.